In this video, I want to walk you through some of the animation I was hired to create at ILM San Francisco on Avengers Infinity War. Before we jump into that though, I wanted to give you a little backstory. So if you want to skip the backstory, you can just click the time codes in the description below and jump ahead to the walkthrough. But so some of the backstory is I was actually working at a different studio in San Francisco at the time, and they were a little slow. I think some projects had been pushed back or something. And so to try to create a win-win situation, I told the producers there, hey, why don't I see if ILM needs some help for a few weeks while things are a little slow here, and I can go help them out, relieve some pressure off of here that there's too many people around, and then I can come back and finish out my contract once things pick back up. So that ended up working out. ILM actually needed some help. And so it just kind of goes to show, like, it doesn't hurt to ask sometimes and see if, a crazy idea like that might actually work out. And in my case, it did. And luckily, I'm really fortunate that I got to work at ILM again. This was the second time I was hired to work at ILM. So I was really excited to return, even if it was just for 3 weeks. And I don't even think at the time I knew exactly what show I was going to be working on, but was super excited that it was Marvel and Avengers, and that I was actually working with Kevin Martell. I had worked, like I say, at ILM before, but I'd never worked with Kevin, who, the funny backstory here is when I was an animation student 10 years before this moment when I got hired, SIGGRAPH conference is a big conference that happens every year in LA. And the year I was in film school in Vancouver was the first year they were having it outside of LA, and they were having it in Vancouver. And so naturally, I went as a student, eager to meet industry professionals and try to rub elbows with them and talk to them. And at that time, Kevin was giving a presentation on Rango. I believe he was the animation supervisor on that movie for ILM. And so he was giving a talk about it at SIGGRAPH. And so after that, his presentation, I went up to him and asked him if he could look at some of my animation for me. So I knew he was going to be giving that presentation, and just in general for people presenting there. And if I had the chance, I wanted to be prepared. So what I did as a student was get my animation on my iPhone as a video so I could play back. And so he watched it, was very gracious, and gave me some good feedback on, I believe it was, I needed to pick a style. I think in the one animation, I was kind of like cartoony and then photoreal. And so it was really good feedback, and just, I was super honored that he even talked to me at all. He's a really nice guy. But the funny thing is, 10 years later, here I am actually working with him in San Francisco. And so I told him that story, and he thought it was pretty funny, but it was a really cool full circle moment for me in my animation journey to have been this like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed student, just like hoping to catch someone's ear and get some feedback from someone as professional as he was and is, and then to being able to work for him on one of his shows was really a great career moment for me. So anyway, let's jump into checking out what I actually did. So I was hired for those 3 weeks. If you actually look at the credits for the movie, I don't even have a credit in the movie. I was hired late in the show. And so I think that was part of the reason why I didn't even get a credit, which I don't really care about, to be honest. But it is kind of cool to see at the end of a movie and point it out to your significant other or whoever. But they already know you worked on it because they were probably with you through that, or you talked their ear off about it. Anyway, so I actually don't even have a credit in this movie because I was only on it for 3 weeks. So I knew I needed to jump in and be as productive as I could be. And I think that's also why they hired me, because I'd worked there before. So it's not like I needed to get retrained on how the pipeline worked or anything. So I was pretty familiar with that. And so I was able to get up to speed and get a couple shots. So let's get started, and let me turn on the screen recording software so we can get started and kind of doing this walkthrough of the shots I worked on. So here we are in Sync Sketch. This is a really nice website to create an account on, to analyze your own animation and get feedback from others. And it's just a really nice service and website I highly recommend. So we're going to play through this one time together. I'll turn off the audio after that, and then we can step through it, and I can kind of do drawovers and talk you through how I approached animating these shots. So those shots were the bulk of what I did over those 3 weeks.
What is this? What the hell is happening? Oh,
All right. So let's start from the beginning. I'm going to turn off the audio here so it's not distracting us. So anytime you work on a film, they will have handles on a shot because they don't want to have you go through all the animation, lighting, compositing, and then in edit be like, can we move this shot over a couple frames or extend it or shorten it? Not really shorten it, but mainly for extending it. Handles mean, you do about 8 to 12 frames on either side, meaning the in point and the out point of that shot. So when you do an action sequence like this, I ended up animating a lot because there's so many cuts, right? We have this shot, 2, 3, 4, 5 shots for that little sequence. So if there's 8 frames on either side, that's 16 frames times 5, which is whatever that math is. 30 plus 50, 80 frames, something like that. Anyway, it's quite a bit. So when you get an action sequence like that, you're going to end up doing a lot of animation that no one's ever going to see. And so this might seem not like much to do in 3 weeks, but keep in mind there are handles on all of these shots. And I think they were 8 frames. I can't really remember. This has been a few years since I worked on this. So this, when I got assigned these first 2 shots, I knew that these other shots after it had not been assigned to anyone yet. And so I was highly, highly motivated, knowing I was only there for 3 weeks, to get these first 2 shots done up to a good quality as quickly as I could, so that hopefully I could get the shots that follow it and I could own like a little chunk, this little sequence. And I was so stoked to even work on this. I could have worked on all kinds of different things, but to be given, especially this late in the game on a movie, to actually start a shot from scratch was really exciting, because normally if you're getting onto a movie late, you're cleaning other people's work, or maybe someone left the show and then they need to hire people to finish up or something. So you might not even get the chance to start your own shot. So to have this chance, I was really, really excited. And I knew if I could get these first 2 shots done, that maybe he'll just keep giving me another one, and then I could get this whole little sequence here. And so that's ended up what happened. So I think the expectation was I was only going to be able to do 2 shots in 3 weeks. And I ended up doing 5 shots, and then I ended up helping on 2 more, one of which was the really long one you saw at the end of this. So when I started this, I had to do a lot of research on what had been up to this point. It's not like I had seen this before. This is all secret, top secret stuff. So I had to take a moment to learn the kind of body language and locomotion that had been established for these Outrider characters. So to clarify, I animated the Outriders. I guess I should have said that up front. So if that's not obvious, they're not real. So I needed to understand what had already been established, because I need to work within that framework and make sure that the shots that I'm animating are going to look similar to what's already been done before and after it. So there's a lot of analyzing, going through stuff, getting up to speed on how do these guys move? What's the kind of language by which they're moving? Do they move? If they were to do an action, is it like over 4 frames or over 8 frames or 12 frames, or are they to me, these guys were very reptilian, and that's kind of the inspiration I took when I was thinking about how ferocious and attacking and snappy they needed to be in this attack moment. And so that's where the kind of reference in my mind that I took over the feeling that I wanted it to feel when you watched it. So this first shot is very short, but it's one of my favorites because you get like a nice clear picture of everything that's happening. And it kind of sounds crazy that I can't remember this, but I'm pretty sure that there was a body double here, and so he was kind of pulling his punch a little bit into the neck of this guy who was standing there. And so obviously they replaced the guy with my animation. The other thing to note here is these shields are actually CG. So those were given to me. They were basically rotomated or rotoscoped by another department before it got to me. So those were kind of locked in and approved. Okay, these match well to his arm motion. Now they had rigs on them, so I could still mess with them, and you'll see in this later shot how I did that. But I wanted to have a very clear silhouette here so that I could see, this separation. And because it was such a short amount of time, this stuff needs to be very, very clear what is going on, especially with an outrider that has 4 arms. You don't want to show them all, right? If what we need to be looking at is this connection here, I don't need all 4 arms of this guy out like this. In this short amount of time, we need to be clear on what we're watching. So that's how I approached staging the outrider and his pose. And I also wanted to get him in a position where he could basically get into this pose, right? I wanted this to be the end pose. So you can kind of work backwards on like, all right, if I want this kind of a silhouette where he's trying to grab, and I wanted him to feel kind of desperate, right? So he's like grabbing onto him, and it's a very desperate moment where he's just, these things are like insane. They're not, it's not like you can rationalize. They're just like super animalistic. So I wanted it to be very grabby and like, just, there's no holding back, right? It's not like super elegant fighting. It's just ravenous and insane. But anyway, what I wanted to do is kind of work backwards from this kind of a pose so that we have a clear kind of impact moment. And that, again, that the arms weren't confusing the silhouettes or anything. The one thing that I did have some notes on, I can remember, was this arm down here and the impact of that. And so let's take a quick break to look at actually some of the reference I shot just to get this arm. So this is in a reference room. So at a lot of studios, they'll give you a room for animators to shoot because it can feel a little bit embarrassing to shoot reference. And so sometimes there's a dedicated room just for animators to go shoot reference. But so I just wanted to figure out the timing. What is this kind of whiplash moment of its arm like? Does that happen over 2 frames, 3 frames? So I'd already animated this, but I wanted to like confirm, is this what it would really be like if someone was getting hit and kind of bracing themselves? So, that's just, that shot's only a few frames, but like I wanted to end on a very clear silhouette. So again, look at this hand, I wanted to make sure that what we are getting in a split second was the desperation, mouth open, grasping this hand, this one being impacted, resisting. I wanted everything to say that, he's losing in this moment and that we feel this impact from this, right? So we have this impact and it needs to carry over through into this. And I think there's a bit of a double cut here. If you watch his head here, when it ends on this frame, in the edit, his mouth should be open and it should be over here. So it's a bit of a double cut. So, in action sequences, that's kind of what it's called, like where you have overlapping action because there's the cuts are so quick. You want the audience to be able to see it. So that would be an editing choice. I have the handles, they can edit it however they want. That's not up to me. So again, this is the shot where I really wanted to play with the shield. And so you can see the hand again grasping, and I wanted to get the fingers, a lot of motion in the fingers. And same thing here, it's just like super grabby, desperate. It's trying, and like, I keep probably using non-animation terms because it's like the feeling that you want it to have will inform what action you're going to take, at least to me. So one thing I remember I had to do was kind of tone down some of this, that when I was animating it, it was almost like he was playing piano or something too much. So I wanted one regroup. He grabs it and then he kind of re-grabs it, like repositions his hand. So I wanted that kind of tug. And so you can see, starting here, if you watch the shield, it starts there and then it gets yanked over from, this position to this position. So it's that kind of a change. And I needed to keep, this finger here while he repositions his other fingers. Just to give it, it would be pretty boring if he just had his hand there and it wouldn't convey that desperation, right? Same thing with these other arms. The one that came in early and kind of smacked him and on the shoulder here. And this is something, when you're working with a plate that you can only kind of take it so far, because I didn't have control over, like, say, this shoulder pad thing. So I couldn't really grab it. I couldn't put the fingers over this because it would look weird that it's not moving if I put the fingers over that far. So, all these choices are made very intentionally. And I'm very lucky to, at a place like that, you work with such amazing people and they can help guide you on those decisions if you're stuck, or in daily sessions and you can kind of explain where you're maybe stuck or need help on thoughts. But these reviews went pretty quick because I was trying to work as fast as I could. So I didn't have a ton of notes on these. It was mainly just the piano fingers I think I had to dial back. And the other thing to notice here is kind of the relationship between the shoulder and the elbow, and how when it's pulling down, let's see, on this one, I wanted, if we're watching here, like this kind of ball and this kind of ball of the wrist and the shoulder, they could probably even be separated a little bit. The wrist goes first, like barely first. The shoulder's not going down yet here on this frame. And then it starts going down. So there's like those little one frame offsets to help kind of break up the action. And then also, the main feature here that I haven't talked about yet is obviously him trying to eat him with his mouth. So when I was looking at those, I was thinking about the rhythm of it, because, a lot of times you want to create contrast to your animation. So you don't want to have everything happening evenly on the same time. So it's not like when he's trying to bite him that I want him to go 1, 2, 3, 4. It should be sporadic and have different timings. Pop, 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 big, small, pop, So that was part of the decisions on the timing of how he should try to bite him, and to vary that up and make it look very ferocious. One thing I wish we could do is just tilt the camera up a little bit, because we miss some of this mouth opening. And you can do some of this in like pan and scan, or I forget what they kind of call it in compositing, but there's like a overscan area where you can kind of reframe a little bit. But that's the only thing I wish I could change a little bit with this, is that maybe I could. It was so hard to get like a good antic where he would raise back to anticipate a bite and not have him go off screen because it was so tight here. And but that just kind of adds to the chaotic feeling. Hopefully, I think The Revenant is another movie that I would say kind of inspired this kind of section for me. That sense of like chaos and wild kind of danger, the bear attacking scene in The Revenant. So I think that's kind of the feeling they were going for here as well, possibly. So if everything was super properly framed, it wouldn't feel as chaotic, right? So I think that probably goes to a part of those decisions. Again, these cameras are locked when I get them. I don't, at least in this case, I didn't have, a say over how the cameras work. Because when you work in visual effects, it's all dependent on the match move of the camera. So there's not a ton of wiggle room there. But again, I think the motivation for that camera and that tightness was the fact that, it's not like in this chaotic moment, you get to really frame your shot up. That would make it not feel so chaotic. So let's just move through here again. A lot of similar kind of things going on. The fun thing about this was that I'd done a lot of more photorealistic type of animation, and these guys were kind of superhuman. So it was fun to get to do things like over one frame, like have this snap over one frame where he's biting him or trying to bite him, and have it really threatening right before the moment he's kind of saved by this other tackle. So this was kind of a complicated shot because it was the first kind of full body shot of this sequence. So, we're getting to see the legs and the feet and the contacts and stuff. Let me run back real quick and give a shout out to the other animators on the show, because up to that point, a ton of work had been done. And in this first shot, part of it was also populating the background. None of this was in there. So I was able to take some of the animation library of some of the kind of crowd animation that had been done up to that point and fill in the background here. So there was, I think, a guy getting stabbed. I guess it's off the handles maybe. But, it's stuff like this that, like, you might spend a half a day on or a day on, and then it gets blurred out and and cut a little bit, so you never even see it. But such as, that's the nature of working in movies, or really anything, I guess. But anyway, so going on to the kind of impact moment here. It's all this little stuff I'm probably like leaving out, and I could probably talk about this for a lot longer, because when you spend like 2 weeks, 3 weeks animating something, it's hard to condense it down into like 10 or 15, 20-minute discussion. And this has been a few years since I worked on it, so I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot as well. But one thing to note here is, I want to and help the viewer anticipate all this motion. The first thing we have obviously is him looking, which is a huge help for us to know something is about to happen. Like, what's he looking at? And the other thing that I could do in my animation to help sell that idea is, the biggest thing we can see in the screen is the shoulder, and we can see that is moving before his head stays behind. It's still there, right? And so his shoulder goes really hard and fast because, an impact, it's not like you get to ease out of that much. It should be pretty abrupt. But that also helped us kind of be prepared to see this transition and the impact of this other outrider come in. So that was, part of that is just selling that moment of, okay, something is happening and now I'm ready to see it. So even if it's just a few frames, the viewer kind of is prepared, and it's not, everything isn't just going by and being like, wait, I don't understand what just happened, right? So especially with characters with 4 arms and 2 legs and moments like this, it's like, you have to be very clear in your silhouettes and like how you're posing everything. Otherwise, stuff can get lost. So, this was a really fun moment to get this type of like, his head getting tossed back, them kind of headbutting each other here, and really getting that line of motion through the body. And that went through his center of gravity here, that's starting down here and kind of went up and followed that headbutt motion, right? He's getting headbutt here. This is getting pulled back. So then his whole body is arching back up through that motion. Same thing through his legs. So everything is selling that motion, as hopefully as it would occur if you were to get headbutted at good speed. The other little fun thing right here was like getting his arm caught. This arm, there's so many arms here. Getting this arm caught in the armpit, in the middle armpit here. So if you watch this, there's a lot of drag on that arm, and then it pops out here. And at the time, I didn't really know what the texturing was of these guys, so I didn't really have that to help inform what my silhouettes were. I think the decision to have them be all scarred up like that is, based on the story up to that point as they were going through the shield. And so, let me, I got to restart this camera because it goes out after so long. 1 second. Okay, so we're back. This video is taking a little longer than expected. Hopefully this is entertaining to people. This is what animation is, like nerding out, geeking out on like the minutia, because you're not given this stuff, right? Like this was all keyframes. I guess, I don't know if I made that clear. None of this was mocapped, right? You can't mocap someone with 4 limbs. No one has 4 limbs. 4 arms, I should say. Everyone has 4 limbs. Well, most everybody. I actually have a dog that has 3 limbs. Anyway, you can't motion capture an alien creature with 6 limbs, 4 arms and 2 legs. So all this was keyframed. And anyway, that's why this is taking a long time to even just explain because this is what animation takes, right? Like you have to pay attention to all these little details and you have to be the one to physically put everything right where you want it to be on every frame. That's your responsibility as an animator. And, and also take feedback, receive notes, and make sure the vision of the animation supervisor, your lead, the director, is what's on screen, not just your ideas, right? This isn't my movie. This is someone else's movie. I'm working for them. So anyway, this stuff takes a while. So hopefully this isn't too boring. So we're here on this shot. So again, I'm kind of like watching this with you for the first time. I wanted this like windmill motion too on these arms. So you can kind of, based on the type of motion you want to have, you can kind of figure out where it needs to start and end. So for example, if we're watching these arms here, I wanted to have this kind of windmill motion rather here, right? So they're kind of spinning. So if you have 2 limbs, one needs to go before the other. They can't both go at the same time. So just as you kind of thought process through this stuff, it kind of, informs itself like, okay, so this arm is already down. It's already going. This one's now catching up to it. It's still on the up. This one's already started going down. So we have that offset of that windmill motion. Now, 2 frames later, now this one's going down. This one's already off, right? And that's part of the reason, like, I want to help control a silhouette. I don't want like flailing motion over here the whole time. It needs to be clear. One thing is happening at one part of the frame at any time. So at least, anyway, this is all my opinion and what I was thinking about. Not to say this is the only way this could have been animated. This is just what I was thinking. So hopefully this is helpful when you're approaching your animations. So the one kind of funny thing, I was expecting them to composite this guy, this guy here. I think he should be over here. He should be on the other side of Captain America. It happened so quick, I don't think anyone's gonna like call it out. But in space, I think that's how I had it, because this guy was rotomated a little bit. By this guy, I mean Captain America, which, by the way, a little backstory too. This was the party favor, one of the party favors. They had all the Avengers and Marvel characters at the wrap party at a bar in San Francisco. And so I wanted to make sure I got a Captain America one because I animated Captain America stuff. And then afterward, I also got the little Lego set of the Outrider and Captain America there. Almost said Captain Avenger, which isn't a thing. Anyway, so what was I talking about? This thing, right? So Captain America was rotoscope. There was a like kind of digi-double thing that I could use as a holdout, meaning in my animation, it would be like, okay, I can see that he's in front of these characters here. So in Maya, it would be, this guy's in front. The plate is in front of these guys. But if you watch here, we can see that that's not the case. They didn't composite him the way I was expecting them to. But, I'm not the compositor, so maybe they had a different idea. But based on the trajectory and how far he went, I think he should be on the other side of him. Anyway. And then, fun fact, like, where is he here? Right? This is movie magic, fun stuff. He is over here, right? So anyway, that's just a little Easter egg moment there. But so for this shot to work, like he couldn't have been in this position that he is in now. It would have been too muddled and he would have been blocking this character. We need to see this guy coming. And so this was one of my favorite shots of the sequence to animate because there's so much going on here. And it's like the first kind of wide shot we have, and it gets to be super crazy where they're all attacking him. And the one fun thing was where it's not like when I was given this shot, they were like, hey, make sure this one bites his knee. I was given a lot of leeway where it was like, I think the note was like, hey, have 4 of them attack him, right? Or 3 or however many it ends up being. And so when I played back the plate before I had done any animation, there's nothing going on. It's just Captain America rolling on the ground, right? I have to look at this and think, okay, where's an opportunity here where all this will make sense and he can feel like he's being attacked. And so there's this moment with his knee here that I don't know why I'm pointing at the screen like you can see it. There's this moment with his knee here that I felt, right? Like it's getting lifted up. If you watch his ankle, like it's in the ground and then he lifts his leg up. In the plate, there's no one there like puppeteering his human body around to make it look like that. He was holding his body that way. And so it's up to me to try to find opportunities like this to have it make sense to be like, oh, I'm going to have an outrider bite his knee because, and then grab it, this leg, right? That makes sense for the motion here. And so same thing here, right? Like so let me play this back real time. Boom, boom. So when we're watching this back, you have to kind of imagine these guys not here and you're given this shot and you're watching this. So he rolls this way and then back. So, that's another opportunity. So watch this arm here. So this is the guy that just got tumbled and should be on this side of Captain America. And watch his arms here. He helps motivate this rollover with this arm. So he's actually shoving him back, flipping his arm back. He's super strong. Obviously, these outriders are strong. They're messing with him. So if you notice, he flips up his leg. It wouldn't really make sense for him to keep holding it. So he kind of like slips and flips it up. But these are the kinds of things when you're given a plate and like, hey, make this look cool. You need to take your time and really plan this out. A lot of animation is just planning before you actually go into execution mode. Like, all right, this is what's happening. I think it'd look cool if this happens. Okay, now sit down, do the work. Is kind of how I approach this. I need to figure out how to make this look cool because so much is going on. You can really quickly get overwhelmed. And I think that's a lot of new students maybe get overwhelmed when they bite off more than they can chew, no pun intended, based on what we're watching. But it's really easy to get overwhelmed, especially early on, if you don't take to heart the planning stage of animation, because there's so much going on and you end up thinking of like things on the fly and it's too much to handle. And then you end up like noodling stuff that isn't connected to the original stuff or each other. And then it just kind of gets out of hand and it's a big spaghetti mess. So you want to kind of have like a good game plan before you like sit down to really do the work. Obviously things change as you start working, be like, you know what, that was a bad idea or whatever, or I have a better idea. But let's go back to the start of this shot here where watching this, I'm like, okay, now I know, at least I have one pose in mind. It's going to be, this guy needs to be here biting his knee. All right, where does he come from? Because like in the previous shot, he wasn't there. So he's got to come from somewhere, right? So you kind of like hit these landmark ideas and then you can kind of reverse engineer. All right, well, he's got to come from over here. So I'm going to put him over here. How long does it take him to get from point A to point B based on the beginning of the shot? That's the distance. All right, let me put him here. Does that timing feel right? Should he start from further back because he's a lot faster or what have you? So the one thing with this locomotion that I wanted to convey was this type of reptilian kind of vibe here. So there's like if we were watching this from a profile view, it'd kind of be like his head is leading and then his body kind of follows. And we kind of have this like sine wave locomotion here with his head leading, because they're very, biting motivated. So their head should be leading that motion in my mind. So that's kind of the blade of their attack. So they want to hit that first. So that's where I was going with that in my mind. So let me erase that. So then I wanted a big antic too, that, he could kind of really clamp down on this thing. And then, same thing here is like, I want them to feel like all encompassing. And so that's where, he should be grabbing him. He should be, getting really wide and frame now and like, dominating this moment. And so anyways, that's when I'm thinking about like posing. Should his arm be up here? Should it be down there? What am I doing here? And when you have this many arms, you have to put them somewhere. So yeah, that is, I had this kind of like dog head shake moment a little bit, as much as I could, based on, this knee is locked in place. It's not like I can move that. So there's only kind of so much you can do, but he kind of has this kind of rotation, head snappy dog with a chew toy moment there. So he keeps following the knee this way, and then he kind of snaps it back. And then we have this other guy come in, and the moment is kind of completing here. So that's where, I wanted to feel overtaken. So these other guys kind of swoop in, but I also wanted to feel very animalistic. So, this one's actually snapping at this guy. If you think of like hyenas, like eating a carcass or something, like they're competitive amongst themselves too. So, it's all these kinds of like ideas and how should these guys be behaving in the moment that will help inform the animation and your decisions. So it's all those kind of little characteristic things that, as an animator are fun to think of and see if it actually works. Some of it doesn't work. Some of it's like too much or on the nose or that kind of a thing. So let's play back through one more time and see if I notice anything else. Let me clear all. And then I don't know how to do that. Anyway, we'll just play it back, because I've waited so long to like actually make this video. I want to make sure I'm not forgetting stuff, because I know I'm going to watch this later and be like, oh my gosh, why didn't I talk about whatever? But this video is already so long that I've probably talked too much. Yeah, I think that's the gist, right? So I was super excited, and this is like one of the prouder moments of my animation career so far, because growing up, I was such a Marvel fan. I watched the X-Men, the animated cartoon series, and just to be able to touch anything in the Marvel universe, it's like, my kid self wouldn't have believed that I would have had that chance. And this stuff comes along, you're like, it's not like I knew I was going to get this gig and or these shots or whatever it is. Anyway, I'm like, I'll always be happy that I got to work on that. I'm getting like super sentimental right now and nostalgic for this, working on this. It's like, that's what you work for, it's, you put in all the hours and you finally get your chance to animate something that you're really excited about. Anyway, so I just want to talk a little bit about this stuff. So yeah, Captain America actually was going to have his shields on. It's like, hey, where did they go? And the problem with that is, at least I was having with it, was getting his shields to look right, because they had done like a first pass, and then I was trying to clean it up. His wrist position, they were, they're like pointy at the end here. And because his wrists are like this, it would actually be pointing through it. So there was no great way to really pose them out, and have it not look wrong. So I think they just got rid of them. And then Frame Store did Rocket here. So the other stuff I did in this scene was Hulkbuster, idle cleanup. So Kevin had put in a idle for Hulkbuster here, and it was just repeating itself. And so I needed to break up that kind of pattern. So that was the other part of the shot that I worked on, trying to find moments, especially based on, obviously the actor's reaction, where there could be opportunity to kind of, let's play through here. I think I think he turns away here in a moment. Yeah. To just kind of reposition him, So the bigger thing that I did was adjusting the mocap performance of Warhammer. So if we play through this, so originally they were going to have his helmet on here, but the way Don Cheadle, the actor here, had turned his head so quick, even though the helmet was matching exactly what he was doing, it didn't look right. You can get these things in animation where it's like, especially in visual effects, where you're like, this is a 1-to-1 match with what happened, but it looks wrong. And so that was one of those moments with his helmet. He moves his head turns so fast here. There was just something that looked off about it. And I think it's partly because, this is a suit and it's a human controlling a suit. So it shouldn't have that quick of a reaction in my mind's eye, like kind of subconsciously thinking about it, because there's that separation of the human to the machine, timing wise. So turning your head that quick I think that's why it felt off. Maybe I'm just guessing. I mean, I don't know, but it felt odd. The other thing here was the fact that his chin was kind of intersecting with the other parts of this. And with the helmet on, there's even just that much more thickness around his head. And it was even more obvious that he was actually his head was here and here. His head was intersecting with his kind of shoulder pads of the armor. So that probably also lent itself to be like, you know what? And it's an emotional moment. I think he should have his helmet off here. One kind of motion capture adjustment that was requested to be made was to lower his arms. So his kind of extreme pose in this moment, where he says something like, what's going on here? What's happening? When he says that in this moment, the actor actually had his arms maybe this high. I'm not good at drawing. He raised his arms and had his hands in the air. Like, what's going on? And I think it was just too big of a movement maybe for them, or anyway, they asked me to kind of change the animation. So I basically went in and reanimated his arms to be a much smaller performance. So you can kind of see he just kind of opens his hands and kind of, I wanted to feel kind of like a defeated shoulder moment. So he just kind of like, and that kind of went with his head. His head had a little bit of a, see that, I don't know if you can watch that if you're watching his head there. So that kind of, the drop of the shoulders, it kind of made sense to me to do that. So that was kind of the main thing that I did on that one. So there was that. And then there was one other shot of when Captain America was approaching the wall for the first time before the attack began. And they were talking to Thanos's minions there. And she's like, we have blood to spare or whatever. That right before that moment, there's like a wide shot and they're walking up to the shield. And I cleaned up the Captain America shield stuff. So for 3 weeks of work, I was really happy that I was able to get this much done. And hopefully I think they were too. And so thanks for watching this hopefully informative kind of walkthrough of how I approached animating on Avengers Infinity War. I teach animation and Maya and other digital kind of things on digitalcreatorschool.com. So if you want to learn how to do this kind of stuff, if you've never animated before, I have a great course called Principles of Animation that will start from, animating a Post-it note. I also have a course on how to break into the animation industry. So it's 6 hours of me and also interviews with other professionals in the industry, not just animators, but modelers and riggers and all kinds of different positions. And basically giving my advice and their advice on how you can break into the industry, what things you can do, how to get your portfolio prepared, where to start with education and how the interview process works. That's its own whole thing. It's like you do all the training, but then it's like, how do I actually get my foot in the door? Remember that being such a big question mark for me. That's why I made that course. Anyway, I've made over 70 plus hours of classes, so you can check all those out at digitalcreatorschool.com. Definitely subscribe and let me know in the comments if you want to see more stuff like this. Like I said, the other films I've worked on, video games like The Last of Us Part 2, I can maybe do a walkthrough similar to this. But hopefully this was informative and you got something out of it. And I wasn't too rambly. I promise I'm not so rambly in my courses. Anyway, I'm Lucas Ridley with digitalcreatorschool.com. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.